What's going on, people? My name is Batman, and last night I had a severe case of itchy gooch. And the thing is, I went to sleep and it seems that my itchy gooch persisted through the night, and I believe I must have scratched it the whole night because I woke up and it was pretty fucking gnarly. I mean, I did some damage. I've been doing the splits all day because it stings hella bad to put my legs together, especially if I sweat or some shit like that. And I'm always sweating down there because no man's nether areas are as furry as mine. But what I really wanted to talk about was the campaign in the new Call of Duty and the franchise in general going forward. I would really like this campaign to have some legitimate depth and, more importantly, some social relevance. For the last couple of years, it really feels like Call of Duty has relied on sensationalist and incredibly absurd storylines, along with flashy, cheap, over-the-top gameplay sequences that are wholly unrealistic, along with almost laughable cinematics to build their campaigns. The most prominent example that I usually use is in Black Ops 2 when you're fighting Soviet tanks on horseback. Or in Modern Warfare 3 when you and Soap were marching towards that skyscraper on the last level in bomb suits with miniguns and you know, it plays out like an 80s action movie. These are things that would have been really cool back in the day when I still busted up for things like Dragon Tales, but past that point, it almost insults my intelligence. COD campaigns are devolving into cheap shoot-'em-up action movies with little intelligible plot, no basis in reality, and over-the-top fantasy scenes that aren't as badass as the developers want them to be, simply because I can't stop laughing and or cringing at the ludicrousness of the situations. Again, fighting Soviet tanks on horseback, I mean, what the fuck? And it wasn't always this way. When you go back to the World War II games, now granted they were over-exaggerated in terms of how many bad guys you killed. You know, in real life, if you went through that much fighting, you killed that many dudes, the government would pull you out of combat and give you some medals, or you'd go insane, or frankly, you wouldn't be able to kill that many dudes. You'd get killed long before that, you know, after like the third level. Outside of that, the World War II campaigns were a gritty exhibition of a real-world conflict that actually took place, and they are rooted in historical concepts and, of course, reality itself. And despite some of its sensationalist moments, it was still like a virtual tour of the world, the battles, the battlefields, and the weapons of World War II. I remember the D-Day sequence in COD 3. It was brutal and memorable and, most importantly, true to form. It provided the player, the audience, some legitimate insight into things that have actually taken place in the past and that are relevant in their capacity to inform us of the true intensity of war. Even with Call of Duty 4, the campaign storyline wasn't that ridiculous. You know, one of the Western powers' greatest fears in the Middle East right now, specifically in regards to Pakistan, is that their nuclear weapons could fall into the hands of extremists. In COD 4, you have a military coup against the democratically elected head of state in what I believe was an imaginary Islamist nation, and the result is an incredibly dangerous dictator extremist with nuclear capabilities and the intent to use them. This is a completely plausible scenario and one that keeps Western leaders up at night. The Russian ultra-nationalist plotline was a little less believable, but hypothetically, if the Soviet Union had never recovered from its economic collapse, there would have to have been, you know, some sort of power vacuum that might have allowed that kind of extremism to grow into or out of it, similar to how there was a power vacuum for extremist behavior in Germany, you know, after their economy went to the toilet following World War I. But nowadays, more often than not, when I'm playing a COD campaign, I just can't get into it because it's so unbelievable in my eyes. It was a gradual decline in social significance. It started in MW2 with the Russian invasion of the States, which, short of a complete economic collapse, spiraling the world into total chaos, that I don't think that has any basis in reality. And frankly, full-scale nuclear war would take place long before troops from either side landed on the shores. And there would be no planet left. That's honestly how I feel about, you know, first world nations going to war. But I didn't mind that as much because it was still, you know, in Modern Warfare 2, it still allowed for some very powerful imagery, especially when you're fighting in the White House and the Oval Office, and that imagery brought with it an emotional response from the audience. There was something fascinating, especially to those of us living in America, and we feel so untouchable. There was something emotionally significant about seeing this hypothetical in which the world's most powerful and secure piece of property had become a battleground. It was poetic and expertly crafted. When Captain Price said that the best way to put out a fire was to create a bigger one nearby to suck up all the oxygen, that was fucking powerful. Man, that's like my life philosophy. But again, I don't feel that way anymore. What made the sensationalism of past Call of Duty so effective was the restraint, not the oversaturation. You go back to COD 4, you have one Hollywood sequence at the end of the first level where you're escaping from that sinking ship, right? You remember that? You have a powerful scene when that nuke goes off and your helicopter doesn't escape. You have another Hollywood heart pounder, you know, when you have to carry Captain McTavish to safety through the streets of Chernobyl. You know, these are sensationalist scenes and sequences, but classy and methodically constructed and placed conservatively, you know, placed in a few areas for maximum effect. Whereas you fast forward to Ghosts, the entire campaign is one of these, sensationalist sequences. For instance, level 1 of Ghosts. You escape this neighborhood while the fucking earth crumbles beneath your feet. Level 2, escape this crashing space station that's been invaded by, Russian space terrorists. You're fighting in gunfights in space. Level 3, crash this fucking Jeep into the middle of a stadium filled with bad guys and kill all of them. And, it just goes on and on. And I think it's kind of lazy. Like, they just throw in any flashy scene that they can. There's not much emotional depth invested into the sequence or the characters. In COD 4 you felt things. I was sad when that nuke goes off and your character doesn't escape. That was disappointing. I remember when fucking Ghost died, when he got killed by General Shepard in Modern Warfare 2. That was I fucking felt something. You know what I mean? I didn't feel a thing at the end of the Ghost campaign when Rourke tears you away from your brother. I was just like, oh, there's gonna be a Ghosts 2. That's the only thought that really crossed my mind. Because in Ghosts, because it's just so over the top and sensationalist, you're passively viewing what is on your screen. And because of all the chaos they throw on the screen at all times, you keep watching, but you don't necessarily take anything away from that. You haven't gained any insight into the world around you. You don't better understand yourself or anything else. You haven't felt anything. And I think that sucks, because that is the point to art. And I really think that gaming is art, but games that rely purely on flash violence porn, like Call of Duty, are the reason many non-gamers disagree with gamers on the notion that gaming is in fact an artistic, subjective experience with intrinsic moral value. Modern Warfare 2, no rushing. No rushing through the airport. You take your time while you mow down all these innocent civilians. Did you pull the trigger? Did you mow down the innocent people? You didn't have to. You didn't have to, motherfucker. Did you at least try to kill Makarov first once? You're questioning yourself, and suddenly you're not watching your feeling. Intrinsic moral value. Because art is about more than holding your attention for a brief moment. Art is about engaging the audience. It's about the provocation of thought. Thoughts that are useful to the audience that witnesses the creative process of whom should be so audacious as to put their thoughts on a pedestal for the world. What's useful about this hypothetical plot in which a random coalition of South American nations use a piece of technology that hasn't the slightest basis in reality, and that no reasonable person has any reasonable evidence to suggest will ever exist, to take over North America for geopolitical reasons that are asinine at best? We live in a world at war. In reality, we are surrounded by conflict and the potential for hypothetical conflict. Call of Duty has a generation of gamers hooked. Why not use this opportunity to do more than make a quick buck, and instead to make an exhibition of the world in its current state and its many flaws and dangers. Dangers that are truly relevant, more so now than ever. Even to those of us in rich first world countries. The campaigns need to acquire social relevance and dignity. There are so many interesting conflicts that could fit into a single-player campaign, and of course there's room for sensationalism. Explore the most sensationalist hypotheticals of true warfare in modern times. True modern warfare, and take it to its most exaggerated extreme. What would Western intervention in Syria really look like? What about a campaign mission dedicated to these Brazilian crackdowns and self-described military occupations and pacifications of the poverty-stricken favelas ruled by drug lords? How about a Joseph Kony campaign mission? What if shots were fired and a true war broke out in Crimea? What about the wars for clean water that many now see as inevitable? What about the resource wars when the oceans rise and the crops are drowned and those safe from the coastline wither in drought and burn in fire? Those are the hypothetical conflicts I want to explore, because they might not be hypothetical for much longer. Please rate. This is Batman, signing out.